Good evening. Hope you're having a good re:Invent. My name is Dilip Kumar. I'm a Vice President, and I lead our AWS Applications Group. We have an exciting session for you today. I'm going to be interviewing a group of our customers to see how they're thinking about generative AI for their own customers. And I'll also be announcing a bunch of AWS application launches, all geared towards workforce productivity. Customers have always loved building and using AWS infrastructure services for the applications that they've built. But increasingly, customers are also coming to us and asking us to build end-to-end solutions that bundle together sophisticated AI and ML to be able to solve their hardest business problems. These up-the-stack solutions have the same characteristics that you would come to expect from any AWS service. The same reliability, the same scalability, security, pay-as-you-go pricing. But today, we're going to focus on a subset of these applications. But there's one thing in common that all of these applications have. They're all geared towards figuring out how to improve and make the lives of the folks who are working, be it a contact center employee, a supply chain inventory planner, or a knowledge worker, more productive in their day-to-day jobs. Take a look at this video of one possible future of work scenario.
In today's world, it can feel like complexity is the new standard operating process. Imagine if technology could remove some of your employees' daily roadblocks. How could your business evolve and grow? Welcome to the future of work, where every step forward brings us an experience that's simply better for employees and customers. Rather than relying on badges or passcodes for access, with Amazon One Enterprise, employees can gain access across physical and digital resources with their unique palm signature that can't be shared, lost, or replicated. Employees can simply hover their palm over the Amazon One Enterprise device to access their buildings, secure areas, enterprise assets, and software resources. With Amazon One Enterprise, businesses can boost security and streamline operations with a more convenient, contactless employee experience. Now, what if that same simplicity could extend to your employees' computing environment? Imagine a world where their computer is available over the internet wherever they need it. Virtual desktops make that possible, and our new Amazon Workspaces Thin Client device makes it easier than ever to access those virtual desktops, all with a device that costs a fraction of the price of a traditional laptop or desktop computer. IT administrators don't have to worry about provisioning or shipping devices, and end users can set Workspaces Thin Client up in less than 5 minutes. Amazon ships directly to end users, simplifying logistics, and provides a simple setup guide to help end users attach monitors, keyboard, mouse, headset, and webcam, and connect to the virtual desktop service with no IT intervention needed. And now that it's simpler for employees to connect to virtual desktop environments, what if we could also simplify what it takes to do their job? With generative AI, that's a reality. Amazon Q gives employees, like contact center agents using Amazon Connect, guidance in real time using generative AI. Agents chatting with customers can rely on Amazon Q to give them recommended responses and resolutions in Amazon Connect, like helping a customer understand the perks of your credit card reward options, upgrading their current card to a travel rewards card, and resolving an open case. And happier, better-equipped agents equal happier customers. With AWS, you can step into a future where technology empowers your business with simple solutions that simply work. Join us as we reinvent a simpler, more secure way to work.
As you may have noticed, there were a few product placements in there, which brings me to the first of our announcements for today. We are launching, it's generally available, the Amazon Workspaces Thin Client. It is a low-cost hardware device which costs a fraction of what a laptop costs. It comes preloaded with all the software necessary to be able to connect to your company's applications. The IT administrators don't have to worry about provisioning. They don't have to worry about ordering a lot of inventory. And it's very simple. In just a few minutes, your employees can set it up and be accessing your applications. I'm super happy for this. This has been a long time coming, and I can be thrilled to see what customers think of this device. There's another one that we launched, which is now in preview. It's the Amazon One Enterprise Edition. About 1.5 years ago, we launched Amazon One, which is a simple, secure, effective way to enter, identify, and pay. And we use this in several of our retail facilities. We're bringing the same power of to be able to use your palm to be able to identify yourself to an enterprise. Now, employees can access corporate workspaces, shared digital resources, data centers, or even for time and attendance, using exactly the same sets of tools that were available to administrators. So your administrators don't have to worry about figuring out how to set up employees or worry about different ways of accessing different facilities, whether it be hardware or software. Amazon One is one of these long line of investments that Amazon has made over a period of time in AI. But from the earliest years of collaborative filtering, which made itself into our personalization algorithms, or pricing and supply chain, which powers the core of our consumer business, to more recent inventions like Just Walk Out and Amazon One, we've always found a way to bring very practical uses of AI to the workforce. We're again at a cusp of another revolution. Generative AI has captured the imagination of everyone here. And as Adam said, in this keynote this morning, we have a very unique proposition and a unique way of how we're thinking about it. But we will have one thing in common, the ability for people to have choice on how they use it, as well as the ability to find the right business model that works for your customers. As customers are thinking about generative AI, as I said, there's been a ton of excitement, there's been a ton of interest in it, but there's also a lot of questions that have arisen. First, is it enterprise ready? Is it private? Is it safe? Is it secure? How will my data be treated? Foreshadowing. All of those things were thought through in a lot of these things, but don't take my word for it. Here to talk about some of this as to how they're thinking about generative AI for their customers is our esteemed panel. Come on out, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Alex, did you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex Hood. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Asana. I've been at Asana for about 6 years. Asana is the leading enterprise work management platform that makes it easier for work to get done across organizations.
Tracy.
Thanks. Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Tracy Simpson. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain at Woodside Energy. We're a global energy company headquartered in Perth, Western Australia, and our company vision is to provide the low-cost, lower-carbon energy the world needs. I'm a bit biased, but I think I've got the best job in Woodside. My team looks after the end-to-end internal or inbound supply chain for Woodside, so that's everything from contracting, procurement, warehousing, inventory, logistics, corporate property and travel. And the reason it's so exciting and so interesting is we get to see end-to-end across the 3 pillars of Woodside, so oil, gas, and new energy.
Attila.
Hi, I'm Attila Tinnick. I'm CIO at Dish Network. Been there for 5 years. I think a lot of you know us from a direct broadcast satellite perspective. But we have multiple lines of business, so pay TV is definitely one of them. We also have Sling, which is our live over-the-top streaming television. We're also in the wireless business, so as many of you know, the brands of Boost Mobile, Boost Infinite, Gen Mobile, those are all our brands that we support. Plus, we are the nation's only 5G cloud-native network in the United States. So, powered by AWS.
Powered by AWS.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear. Well, let me sort of ask a question that might be on all of your minds, but Alex, I'll start with you.
Sure.
There's this little thing called generative AI that's been floating around. It's been mentioned once or twice during this conference and months leading up to it. First question to you, hype or reality?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm the biggest skeptic of tech trends out there, and this is the real deal. It's the real deal. I feel personally privileged as a product builder to be in the prime of my career at this time, because what is ahead of us is so powerful. The new set of tools, the new capabilities to deliver on all the missions that we have is pretty amazing. And it was also interesting is we all now sit on piles and piles and piles of data that allows us to capitalize on this new technology. So when ChatGPT really was productized, the lights switched on for all of us, and now we're all trying to make sense of it. So I think it is hype, but the hype is real.
So Tracy, how are you thinking about generative AI in your business?
So I think, Dilip, everybody's thinking about it.
Yeah.
I guess from a supply chain perspective, specifically in Woodside, we're still at the process of really trying to understand what we're going to do with it. So what we are doing to prepare for the fact that we expect to use generative AI in the future is we're working a lot on the foundational data models, the ways of working and the key enablers that will enable us to go after it when we're ready to go for it. And we know that we have lots of partners starting to introduce things. One thing we're blessed with mentioning, working off what Alex said, so supply chain, we're blessed with an abundance of data. Probably the part of the problem we have is with the resources that we have, we don't always have the ability to access it, interpret it, and act on it. So what I'm really excited about with generative AI is the ability for us to actually start to synthesize and harmonize that data in a way that we can actually start to generate insights and actions from that. And that's going to enable us to do much, much more interesting and exciting things with our business.
I think it's a really important point. Like in almost all our customer conversations, every conversation of generative AI results in a conversation about how data is stored, where it's stored, what types of access do people have, and how do you sort of combine and have generative AI models work across a set of data. So I think having a data advantage is having a generative AI advantage. So it is the foundation of it. Attila, like for you, how are you thinking about how it's going to improve your customer experiences?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dylan. I mean, I think as I think about Gen AI and kind of moving out from sort of the exploring and tinkering, the obvious use case for me is probably, from a customer experience standpoint, is in our contact center. And I think the most obvious place is chat, right? So we have chatbots today. They probably handle about 70% of a customer's call, and then 30% require a human handoff. But I think we have the opportunity to turn that 70% into a really rich customer experience going forward. And I think we have the opportunity to chip away at that 30% and make that customer handoff 20% or 10%. The reason why I think we can make it a really rich experience is we can really turn that chat experience into something that's more highly personalized. It's definitely going to learn from the millions of other chats, so the response and solutions we provide our customers are going to be well informed. So I think we're in a good position to start to lean into chat in that regard. I think the other place that it could play in the contact center as well is really a Gen AI agent assist, meaning, you know, before we actually put any of our agents on the phone with our customers, they go through a lot of training. So they have to learn our products, they have to learn our systems, our knowledge bases, our flows. I think with Gen AI as sort of a co-pilot for them, they have the opportunity to leverage Gen AI at their fingertips. And really maybe some of that training is actually going to transform into prompt engineering as opposed to system training going forward. So ultimately, I think that'll get our agents out taking calls with our customers sooner, but also a value-add experience for our customers because we're going to be able to answer questions and provide solutions in a much more expedited fashion than we do today.
I had a follow-up question. So you said something about chipping away at that 30%. Do you envision a future without agents, or do you envision a future where the agents are augmented to do different things?
Yeah, I don't see the agents going away tomorrow. You know, that conversation might not be years away in terms of a virtual assistant being able to handle something holistically. I do think Gen AI still needs some guardrails associated with it. I do think a target-rich environment, though, that it's in that vein is an IVR. If you think about IVR process, I think we've all lived through it. It's a little static, it's impersonal, it can be frustrating. I think we've all kind of been there. I think with Gen AI, kind of like the chatbots, we can actually personalize it to a higher degree. We can have it be more of a human-to-human experience, even though it's a Gen AI agent on the other side of it. So I think that's a starting point. And then I think what we'll do is we'll probably measure, and we've got to keep measuring. I think the experience would probably be stronger than what the IVR is today, but probably not quite where an agent is.
Yeah, I think this is very similar to the earlier days of when machine learning and deep learning came in, and people felt that this was going to be a massive shift towards automation. And while it was also a shift towards agents and employees doing more value-added tasks relative to the things that they were doing. So there were things that the machines were incredibly capable of, and there's things that the agents and the humans were incredibly capable of, and it was a good mesh.
Yeah.
Moving on to productivity benefits of generative AI, the question that is on the audience's mind is definitely on that I hear from customers is this enterprise ready? And as I'm thinking about this, what is the ideal state and the expectations I should have? What are some of the concerns that when I as a customer am employing generative AI for my business, what are some of the concerns and the ideal state that I should be thinking of? We'll start with you, Alex.
Sure, yeah. Well, let me start with the promise. I mean, what customers are talking a lot about right now are chatbots. And I interpret that as a product builder as back to that Henry Ford quote of, if you ask my customers what they'd want, they'd say a faster horse. And I think right now the faster horse is chatbots. However, I'm excited about just really deeply embedded AI-driven experiences in supply chain, or can you just imagine the world's customer experiences redefined where you're not trying to deflect from a call to a call center, but getting that help right there at the moment that a customer wants it. Well, we're excited about co-pilots at Asana as well, but what we're really excited about for us in productivity software is being air traffic control. So that means you've got a lot of things in flight, but you can optimize how all those projects and tasks are going along in real time, fully optimized. And when the weather changes or there's drama, then you're able to quickly pivot people and teams to get to different outcomes without causing collisions, and doing it in a way that's very, very safe. So that's the promise. But what we're hearing as well is, gosh, we did the survey just to get ourselves smart on what customers are saying about the space, and 9 out of 10 folks say, hey, I'm concerned about the ethical use of AI. So before we started product road mapping this cycle, we thought hard about what are our AI principles, about how we build. I just want to share a few of them with you. The first is that we build AI to help the world's teams achieve their goals. So AI is in service of us doing great things. It helps us be more human at the things that we're passionate and great at. Number 2, we promote transparency. And what that means for us is AI should and needs to unpack its thinking, show its work, as you were saying earlier.
Show your work, right.
Yeah. And just as humans should too, because often when there's differences of opinion, it's because we don't share assumptions. The third one is people are accountable for decisions. So I think AI will help us along the way, but you can't imagine a world where individuals are throwing AI under the bus for bad decision making. So we are going to stay in the driver's seat, and that's how we're thinking about building the software.
Tracy, the productivity benefits, you said that you are early in this journey. A lot of customers have this two-pronged belief where they feel like they're either too late or they're too early, and everybody is in the same boat. And I think one of the things that you were talking about earlier, which I think the folks here would be very interested in, is in this early stage, how are you thinking about setting the right vision for your organization, for what you want out of Gen AI, and what are all the things that you're concerned about relative to any other type of project that you undertake?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, I'm clearly not the expert in digital. I rely heavily on my digital colleagues at Woodside for that, and they do a great job of educating us on some of the things that are key for our business. One of the things I'm going to borrow from a colleague of mine is a quote where he says, just because we can do it doesn't mean we should. And I really like that ethos because it really sets up the structured thinking I think that we need to consider before we enter these projects. So the first thing for me is, what are we trying to solve for? Making sure we know what our use case is. The second would be making sure that we understand the role we think Gen AI can play. And how can we do it? Does the technology, is it up to speed? The third for me, and it's essential, is path to value. So these are not shiny new toys we want to give our teams. These are things that have to drive real business value and benefit for us. And so once we've kind of evaluated can we do it, then we get into the should. And so for us at Woodside Energy, there's a key principle, which is we have 5 company values. And we have to make sure that anything we do is absolutely compliant and consistent with how we want to behave as a company, the employee experience that we want to have, and what our customers expect of us. The final one for me is timing, actually. So it's a critical one.
Yeah.
We're blessed in supply chain. We've got, there's people in this room, whether they be pharma or retail or any sorts of many industries that are not energy related. But we can learn from some of those people, and we will be able to see innovations that may generate from other industries that are going to be really beneficial for us in terms of how we adapt or adopt those. So we may not want to be on the front edge of all of these things, and in some cases we may deliberately choose to wait to see use cases play out in other industries. And so for me that's really exciting because we get to choose the bits we want to go early on, and we really get to stagger the use cases and really understand collectively across the supply chain sort of domain what will work.
I think this is a super important takeaway. There's this notion, I've met customers on both sides of the spectrum where they feel that they are not sure of what's the best way to move forward, but at the same time they feel that if they don't move forward, they'd be left behind. And being thoughtful on what it is that you're trying to achieve and going through this process is always very useful. Attila, I'm sure you've been in a meeting or two in the past few months on generative AI and what the generative AI approach for Dish is. One of the questions that tends to come up in this is that, in addition to concerns and questions, like who's making the decisions? Is the decision-making process very different? Is it very similar? What are the expectations for a Gen AI-driven project relative to any other project that you undertake at Dish?
Yeah, I'd say from an expectation standpoint, Gen AI probably comes in two flavors. One is, folks like you who are embedding it in your platforms, right? And that's probably our fastest path towards adoption, at least in terms of our core processes. We're going to see it in productivity tools like Office 365 or Google Workspace. My HR department's going to be super excited about being able to do a job description in minutes, and my team building slides in hours, not days. They're certainly going to be excited on that front. But if you look at our core processes, I think the fast path for us with Gen AI is probably going to be things like, Amazon Connect from you guys. That will potentially can unlock some of the capabilities I was just talking about. Or it could be a platform like ServiceNow. If we have tickets that are going into ServiceNow today, it would be fantastic if we also use that to isolate the issue, resolve the issue, and draft a fantastic root cause analysis out of it. Adobe is another one. I think they presented at this conference as well about Firefly. I think there's going to be a lot of creative there that we'll be able to leverage and put into our digital assets. So I think we've been spending a lot of time with partners like you, Dilip, and really exploring it. But with that said, we'd be negligent, or I'd be negligent if we weren't doing some POCs on our own with the second way it can propagate, which is us learning and applying and doing POCs with foundation models and LLMs. So we've done some early POCs with things like Falcon and Llama, where we've taken order data and see what information we could glean, or take our CI/CD tools and draft release notes using Gen AI. But it does kind of segue into a little bit of the concerns that you were talking about that I want to make sure we have in place. Like one big one for me is governance. We really need to govern it on a lot of different facets, meaning, first of all, just in terms of the work that's being done, we don't want lots of science projects. We do want to learn, but we don't want to just kind of generate science projects without really focusing on value creation. So the use cases really matter to us. The other concerns we have, which I think everyone has, is really around IP infringement as well as protecting our own IP. I think a lot of us have seen things in the news where people have had a little bit of a foot fault. We don't want to recreate that. We want to learn from what others have done on that front. And then Alex kind of touched on this as well. Another big piece for me is also ethical AI. There's a lot of things that these models can do that can influence a bias. We don't want to introduce unintended biases. So it's going to be really critical for us to understand the data sets that we are training these models with, as well as testing and inspecting the outcomes and the outputs that's coming from Gen AI. So a lot of opportunity, but a lot of things we've got to be watchful and mindful for as well.
I think that's a super critical point, is that models can be biased in certain degrees, but your data set that's used to train them can have their own natural biases. So if you're not vigilant about watching out for that, it can lead to unintended consequences. Last question for all of you. As several of our teams are working together on many things, whether it be AWS App Fabric, Supply Chain, or Connect, as a technology partner and as an applications provider, how can AWS help your customers?
Well, it's just interesting hearing our conversation here. Tracy, I hear you say, I don't want to be the bleeding edge on some certain things. I want to hear what AWS helps develop as a standard. For Asana, we want to be on the bleeding edge with AWS and figure out with AWS what is the standard? Like, how do you create AI that has the right privacy settings? How do you get the best amount of data to pay off the promise of AI, but do it in a way that is safe and secure? So we see our partnership with AWS really about co-creation. In particular, we've been proud and excited to be building App Fabric with AWS. And what App Fabric does is it connects SaaS applications to serve privacy use cases and productivity use cases. So that security is taken out of consideration, so it makes it very, very easy to look across data to do great things with AI. And it's been fun and exciting, and we've learned together along that journey with the App Fabric team in Asana.
Tracy?
So for me, it's kind of an easy answer because the clue is in my job title. So supply chain, if I think about AWS, the DNA of the company is really kind of quite centered in supply chain. So we've been really fortunate to be able to work with the AWS supply chain team in the order insights module and optimizing that in terms of how we would use that within our business. I think one of the things the AWS supply chain teams brought to the table is really that domain experience, as well as their shared experience from many of the other customers in this room. So they've really been able to bring that to the table, and that's helped us get sort of scale and speed, I think, that we would not have been able to achieve on our own, which has been really exciting. I think the other thing for me in terms of what can AWS bring to the table is my view is possibly a bit different from some of the other sort of digital spaces within Woodside. But I manage a supply chain, so I want my best people doing what they're really good at. So I want my inventory planners, for example, planning and doing the things around my inventory space that really make a difference and drive value for us as Woodside. I don't really want to have to pull them out into some sort of large development project that's going to take them, 18 months, 2 years to develop something highly customized and really difficult. So I'm really, really excited about how we might work with AWS supply chain to sort of adapt and kind of really deploy rather than sort of having to spend a lot of time. So, and I think that's the definition of partnership, is really relying on your strengths. So we bring the knowledge of what we want to do and how we want to get there. And really the AWS supply chain team has helped us kind of navigate that path and bring their expertise to the table to help us get there quicker.
It's great to hear. Attila?
Yeah, Dilbert, I think if the question is how can AWS help, I guess I'd really say, how can you not help? It'd be a massive missed opportunity if you weren't on this journey with us. I mean, you power our storage and compute, you power our data lake, you provide applications like Amazon Connect, like supply chain, like clean rooms, and then you have platforms like Bedrock and SageMaker and others. I mean, the reality is that all the tools are there, and you're deeply ingrained in our ecosystem. I think the big thing that we probably need from you is really a deep understanding of our ecosystem and what operational excellence means to us.
Yeah.
Because I think we've used the word use case a couple times. I think I've used the word use case a couple times already. It's understanding the use cases we need to achieve that operational excellence. You guys are uniquely positioned to help us. So we just kind of need to bring you on the journey as well. I think the other thing you can do to really help us is really coming back to the concerns I raised. I mean, I think there's things you can do to help us. When I mentioned IP infringement, you can help us with indemnification. We really want to make sure that as we're on this journey, we're also thinking about not only just our assets, but our customers' assets, their data and all the regulatory concerns as well. So, I look at this journey and it's very similar, and I might be dating myself, but it feels very similar to when public cloud first came out, because there's a lot of preliminary concerns around risk, security, cost, privacy. I think all the things that you guys have already been through already in your first journey with public cloud, we'll probably be discovering again with Gen AI. So those are things that you definitely can help us with, and coming back to the guardrails I talked about, whether it's ethical AI or just making sure that we're actually using it in a way that doesn't create the hallucinations and gives bad data to our employees or our customers. You guys know the best practices that we need to employ, and so we're going to definitely look to you to help in that capacity.
Well, challenge accepted.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. All right.
Well, I want to thank all of you again and thank the panel. A big round of applause for the panel. Thank you. just talked about some of the things that customers and what's on their mind regarding generative AI, and I want to get to 3 of our launches that have generative AI in a very practical way that you can consume. The first I want to start with is Amazon Connect. We launched this in 2017. It's our cloud-based contact center. It's simple, easy to set up. It is a fully managed telephony network. It bundles sophisticated AI and machine learning. And not surprisingly, it's one of our fastest growing services. And as Attila said, this area is ripe for invention when it comes to generative AI. When you think about the kinds of things that you can do with generative AI, there's 4 launches that I want to talk to you about. The first is for administrators. Self-service chatbot, self-service chatbot creation, which is available in preview today. Chatbot creation has always been a little finicky. It requires a lot of expertise. There's a bunch of customization necessary, a bunch of edge cases to deal with. There's some operational management. But now with self-service, there's no need to sort of hire experts to be able to do this. You should be able to do a lot of this by specifying these things in natural language, easy to set up, easy to maintain, eases the burden on your administrator so you can get your contact center up and running quickly. The second one, which is again for administrators, is Connect is a very powerful application, but it gets even amplified when it connects to very different types of data sources. Now, these data sources all bring in very reasonably similar data elements that are sort of named differently in different parts of the organization. So one of the things that's necessary is the way to be able to create a customer profile data mapping, which can be highly accurate, which can be driven by this is a great example of how generative AI can figure out and suss out the differences between the same field that is mentioned in the operations database, which is very different than the marketing database, which is very different than another customer service database. And having a composite view of your customer is the starting point for any kind of outbound or marketing related activity. So that's another thing that's generally available for admins. The third one that I want to talk about is this notion of post-contact summarization. Now, for supervisors, this is available in preview today. What they have to do is they have to go through and pour through transcripts of what a call center agent is doing so that they can provide the right coaching and training. And they can generally get to a small fraction of it. With generative AI, they can get the right summarization across the entire population of transcripts and build agent evaluation forms on this with very little effort. And Adam mentioned this in the morning for agents, Amazon Q and Connect, a real-time, intelligent, conversational assistant that is listening for customer intent, the right phrases, what you need to do to be able to get the agent the answer that's necessary, as well as the actions. Let's dive into some of these features will look like in real life for agents and supervisors. Think about the day in the life of an agent. A customer call comes in. The agent has to understand the context of the call, understand everything about the customer, how often have they contacted the company, what is it that they're specifically calling about. Then they have to scramble to be able to find the right sets of information to be able to help the customer with their issue. All the while being attentive, while being empathetic, and being patient. Speed matters here. And an agent, that's just one call. Now you have to do this tens and hundreds and thousands of times. Take a specific example. Let's say you're calling in to upgrade a credit card, and you have some questions because you went to the website and you didn't totally follow what you're eligible for or not. When a call comes in and you want to know the benefits of the call, the agent has to know what your unique status is, what is it that you're eligible for, what are the benefits of that particular card, are there any exceptions? Typically, they are scrambling and to try to find this information through 6 or 7 or 8 different assisted applications that may be in very different parts of the business, all the while the customer is on hold. Now, with Q, the customer can just, as the call is coming in, this real-time assistant is listening. It is able to pull out the right intent of the specific things that the customer is looking for and use your knowledge base, your FAQs, your policy documents to be able to build the right and pull up the right information just in hand for the agent. But it goes a step further. It doesn't just provide them with the ability to be able to pull up this information. It also gives them the next most helpful suggestions on what they need to do in order to resolve the customer contact. Being able to resolve these customer contacts quickly keeps customers happy, it reduces your call handling time, so you're able to both lower your costs as well as improve your customer service levels, which is a huge benefit. Flipping to another user, which is the supervisor. Now, the supervisor has also a very interesting but a very difficult job. They're managing tens or hundreds of thousands of agents. Agent attrition tends to happen on a regular basis. And in all of that, as I said, they can only listen to a very tiny fraction of the calls. But now with generative AI, you can get the entire population of all the calls summarized in a very concise manner. Contact Lens automatically summarizes the call. It allows you to be able to figure out adherence to the script. It allows you to be able to provide the right coaching and the guidance that's necessary so that your agents can up-level. So you have a new agent that starts. Their ability to be able to scale to become a superhuman agent is very easy. It's very useful for the supervisors too, because now that they can actually do coaching at scale rather than extrapolate from a very small sample of calls that they could identify with. From administrators, when it takes to setting up this, to agent assist, to supervisors, here's what customers are saying about using generative AI features in Amazon Connect. Orbit Irrigation said that they would spend 10 to 15% time less on every contact. That can be huge. Fujitsu said that for supervisors, performance evaluation efficiency improves by 60%. These are staggering numbers. They add up. All of this results in better customer service at a lower cost. Contact centers is just one place where we're helping workers. Switching to the second application that I want to talk about. There's been a huge sprawl in SaaS applications. The reason that these SaaS applications have increased in popularity is because they're purpose-built. They solve very particular use cases. Everyone who uses it, I use it, you all used it, we all love these applications. Now, and most organizations use somewhere between 50 to 100 of these SaaS applications on a regular basis. Now, while this has been super popular with employees, it is not necessarily as popular for IT administrators or security professionals working at companies because they lose the ability for observability, which is a critical part of their job. By that, what I mean is each of these applications has their own APIs, they have their own log formats, they're not necessarily interoperable. And while companies have built point-to-point integrations, these point-to-point integrations can be costly to maintain, they're hard to replicate, and as new versions come out, they have to keep getting it upgraded. So in June, earlier this year, we announced AWS App Fabric, and as what Alex was talking about, this allows us to be able to connect multiple SaaS applications. We normalize all the log formats so that the individual SaaS applications don't have to do it. We provide a single pane of glass. It connects to your security applications that you've used. So if you're a security professional in a company or if you're an IT administrator, you get the level of observability that you have always wanted, but now you can do this without any of the necessarily heavy lifting. There's a reason why App Fabric has become very popular very quickly with customers is because it specifically hit on what IT administrators and security professionals had been craving for. We also announced at the same time how applications can do more to be able to improve employee productivity. One of the things that tends to happen is that take a look at your own daily lives. On average, you use somewhere between 2 to 5 applications on a daily basis. You're also context switching quite a bit between these applications to do those tasks because they're slightly interrelated. So for you to be able to do your job, you need to switch from one application to the other. The problem with generative AI always comes back to data is that these disconnected applications create data silos. So even if you have a perfect generative AI application built, it's only operating on a very small subset of your data when you want it to actually operate on a much larger subset of data. Let me show you a little bit in this demo as to what we're thinking about.
Today, employees typically switch between 6 to 8 SaaS applications from different vendors to complete tasks, switching context constantly. Application developers see an opportunity to use generative AI to reduce this context switching and provide a richer end-user experience, but are often limited to data within their own software. Without including cross-app data, data silos form, and generative AI results miss important context from other applications that help end users make better decisions. AWS App Fabric for Productivity reimagines productivity in SaaS applications by generating insights and actions with context from multiple applications. App Fabric fully manages the integrations with multiple SaaS applications and automatically normalizes data for use across apps. This means developers can enable AppFabric productivity features directly into their application's user interface to maintain a consistent app experience for their users, whilst surfacing relevant context from other applications. With cross-application context, developers provide a more personalized user experience that increases adoption and loyalty. End users benefit from accessing insights they need without interrupting their workflow. Embed AWS AppFabric in your application's new or existing generative AI assistant to enable your user to be more productive and more connected across their preferred apps.
As Alex was talking about, this is now available. This is an Asana application, and rather than just having aggregated insights from just only what Asana has access to, we're now pulling in information from the applications that you use, and we're surfacing it in the applications that you're currently using. That's a super important point, is that one of the tenets when we were designing this was that we didn't want, what's the point of having people improve their productivity if they have to learn an entirely new way in order to do their daily jobs? That didn't seem very reasonable. So one of the things that we said was, if you're using a set of SaaS applications in order to be able to do your job, we wanted to be able to pull in the right level of insights from the other applications and surface it in the existing application so that you don't have to context switch. You get the information that's necessary that you need to do, and now you're suddenly a lot more productive. And this is available in Asana today. Miro, Smartsheet, Zoom's coming next. And soon we sort of want to build this on a series of applications because we feel that this is one way where you can get people to be able to do the productive tasks that they need to do without the context switch that they're subjected to on a daily basis. Another place where we're using generative AI is supply chain, and this is the last one that I want to talk to you about today. We launched supply chain in April with 3 things in mind. One of the things that was very top of mind for us was companies that spend a lot of time and energy in their own supply chain applications. And they'd come to us and they'd asked us for some very specific things. The first one was, we wanted to be able to pull in all this disparate, different supply chain applications that they'd built over a period of time into a single common supply chain data lake. On top of that, we felt that one of the areas that Amazon has had 30 years of experience is this notion of forecasting and demand planning. So we built a demand planning module that brings together Amazon's expertise to be able to allow the models that's necessary to be able to forecast demand. Once you have the supply chain data lake and you have demand planning, you can then layer on an ML-powered insight thing that allows them to be able to figure out exactly where they have inventory shortages and what actions that they need to take. But for those of you who are associated with supply chain or who have been in this field, this is a very small subset of what supply chain covers. So today, we're announcing 3 new modules: supply planning, end-to-end visibility, sustainability, as well as Amazon Q, an assistant that's going to be resident in the AWS supply chain. Let me talk about some more of these. As I said, supply chain is not really about demand planning. You can forecast customer demand, but at the end of the day, you have to turn that customer demand. You have to order products from vendors. You have to be able to place them at the right warehouses, and you have to get these products and locate them in the right locations. Now, when you have a few products, maybe this process is easy, but companies generally have hundreds of thousands of products. They're working across hundreds of vendors, geographically distributed, multiple different warehouses, and soon this becomes an optimization problem. This is one of those areas where Amazon has spent a lot of time and energy in figuring out how to build the right kind of supply chain algorithms to be able to provide that level of visibility. So the first module in supply planning, now it allows people to be able to help plan, position, and replenish and figure out exactly where inventory is. It gives them the suggestions on where the specific actions that they need to take in order to be able to make sure that they're adhering to the right efficiency levels and the right service levels for their business. If you go back to the original car manufacturer, the example that I had out there, we were thinking, like, when we think about supply chain, we think about finished goods, right? You buy a product and you sell it, and so that's a finished good. But there's several sets of companies, manufacturing companies in general, who are very interested in figuring out how to be able to do this at a component level, the individual components that go into the product, not just the finished product. Think about a car engine as an example. A car engine isn't a single product. A car engine is about 50, 100 different products that are coming from multiple different vendors. Each of those products has their own tier of vendors that they're actually dealing with. And one of the things that happens that works in supply chain is that any blip in any part of the supply chain has a cascading impact that then causes you to not be able to get that finished product built to be able to service your customer demand. And another key tenet for supply chain is that the earlier you can figure these things out, the more visibility you have and the more time you have to be able to react to the obvious fluctuations that are going to happen as part of any supply chain process. So we built N-tier visibility, which now goes upstream, and it extends visibility and insights much beyond the organization. So rather than just looking at your first tier of vendors, it can provide you this visibility for multiple tiers of vendors up the supply chain so that you can predict, plan, and react as efficiently as possible. Through the system, you can actually invite all your vendors and suppliers to be able to part of it. You can share all of this information. You can share product information. You can share inventory information. You can share purchase order. And increasing visibility makes the entire process significantly more efficient. As we started talking to customers about supply planning, one of the things quickly emerged that companies don't just share purchase plans or product information or inventory information. A constant and a very frequent requirement these days is being able to track sustainability information, be it carbon emissions, material, transportation, audit trails. And it's an increasingly burdensome task for companies to be able to figure out and chase and to find out how is it that all the products that they're being increasingly asked to report on from a sustainability perspective are performing. It is a non-trivial task when you think about it from a component level. It's also a pretty sizable task for finished goods as well. So that's why we built the sustainability module in AWS Supply Chain. And one of the things that it does is it provides a single, simple way to invite the vendors that you have, that you're sort of interacting with. It allows you to be able to upload the data, to be able to capture the requests that you need, but it also alerts you to the kinds of things that you may or may not have or that you're missing so that it can fill in those blanks to get that audit trail necessary for just for the reporting requirements. This is proved to be a huge benefit to companies because they feel that they're spending up to 30% of a planner's time on chasing down supply chain requests when they could be spent time actually planning and for the future for their customers. We built this Insights module when we launched supply chain. And when we think about the Insights module is all about trying to figure out and predict, about 60, 70% of from a reporting perspective, the kinds of things that may happen. But if only life were that simple. Generally speaking, when we talk to companies, 30% of the time, they're actually asking for very bespoke type of queries that change on a daily basis. If your demand plans are not going to be the same, if your supply plans are going to be fluctuating, there needed to be some flexibility that we offered in addition to the insights that we're creating to allow customers to be able to ask the questions that they needed to do. This is where Amazon Q in supply chain, in AWS Supply Chain comes in. Now, you can have a conversational assistant that you can ask specific questions. If you have your data in the data lake, you can query the data lake with very specific things that might change from week to week, or it might even change from day to day, to be able to get both graphical representation and rich information that tackles what, when, and do what-if simulations. The what-if simulations are super important for companies because they're constantly being asked questions about the health and the status of their supply chain. And with Q, you no longer have to wait for a report. You no longer have to wait for somebody to be able to run a query that might sort of finish in the next 6 hours. You now have access to all of that information available, and with just a natural language query interface, you should be able to get the supply chain information that you're craving for. One of the things when we launched supply chain is that we felt that we had this root in retail and that there would be a lot of companies in retail that would be gravitating to it. We've been pleasantly surprised by companies across manufacturing, energy, and CPG all interested in this, and we're just getting started here. In all the applications that I shared today, as I said, one of the common threads of what we're going for is this notion of how do we improve the productivity of the folks who are on the front line, or the knowledge workers, or supply chain planners, or inventory analysts, or just making people productive without requiring any context switch. I feel like we're just getting started. I want to thank our great panel of leaders and for you all for coming. There's a lot more that we didn't touch today. There's about 50 plus sessions that are going on, and if you haven't caught it, that goes into a lot of depth into each one of these specific things. And you can always stop by the AWS application booth in the Amazon Village. And of course, the most important part, there's a couple parties that are also going on, so if you're looking for something, this is the place to be. Thank you all. I hope you have a great reInvent, and I'll see you again sometime soon.